Hello, my name is Kirby Kirk. This is my proposal on breaking barriers, the importance of increasing diversity in research participation. So, this is my problem, which is individuals from diverse backgrounds are apprehensive about participating in research, therefore, causing underrepresentation and inequalities in research. There are so many different factors that prevent people from diverse backgrounds to participate in research. These factors can be about limited time, commitment requirements, and even just negative experiences in the past. And this can really discourage participants. Potential participants from underrepresented groups often face a lot of challenges as well. Um, and therefore, recruiting individuals for studies can be really difficult for researchers. So, this is a continuation of the problem. And this is some like real data that has gone and on and been collected. So you don't have to take my word for it. There is someone that has done some research regarding this. So there was a study that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2017. They analyzed racial and ethnic diversity participants for clinical trials. So when they reviewed things, what they understood and discovered was that 80% of participants in randomized clinical trials were of European descent, while 5% were Black, 10% were Hispanic, and between 1 and 2% were Asian. And only 4% of the trials included information about race and ethnicity. And many studies failed to report the diversity of their participants at all. So, what the study kind of concluded was that there is a lack of diversity in research and it limits, just the generalization of findings, and it can lead and cause disparities in our healthcare system, treatments, and even health policy. And so that's one study. And then there was one that the FDA did, which is the Food and Drug Administration. And this one was more geared towards kind of the drug piece of it. But in 2019, the FDA reported and found that racial and ethnic minorities were underrepresented. So for Black participants that make up 13% of the US population, only accounted for 5% of participants for FDA clinical trials. And then Hispanic population, those participants comprised of they're about 18% Hispanic in the US population. And they only made up between 1 and 2% of participants in clinical trials. And then Native Americans is even less. So Native Americans, they represent about 3% of the US population, and they're not even a percent for clinical trials. And with this lack of diversity, it just means that the clinical trials are not accurately reflecting drugs across the different populations. And then it can lead to potential risks, just missed benefits for these minority groups. So, with this proposal, the question that we have is what barriers do participants from diverse backgrounds face, and what strategies can address these barriers? And because there is underrepresentation in research, kind of the hypothesis is community engagement, customized strategies, and transparency in research, and that also includes like rapport building and things of that sort, can really increase participation for diverse individuals. So you may or may not be saying, why does it matter? So inclusion in research is just essential. By including diverse participants, researchers can gain a more accurate picture of the population that they're studying. It can also address health disparities. Making sure that they're represented is vital to being able to identify and address those disparities. Um, Also, ethically, it is important. Excluding a certain group from a study can be seen as unethical. And we know ultimately we it is about bridging that health equity gap. Um, Also, it can help to improve policies, systems, and just overall interventions, and help to make those marginalized individuals healthier. So we'll now talk about the barriers to participating. So what is holding people back? So the first one is historical factors. So there is some mistrust that has gone on in the past. So there were some misleading practices that went on. So many African Americans know about the Tuskegee syphilis study that went on in the United States, and it impacted African American communities and really with their willingness to participate in future research, right? So I think it started in like 1935, around that kind of time. And there was these men that were thought that they were being treated for syphilis when many of them were not, and many died. But the researchers were trying to learn about syphilis in general, but that was something that was very misleading to individuals, and they felt exploited, and regarding just the whole medical establishment, right? And then also there was Henrietta Lacks, which she was a woman that her cells were used without her consent. And so this always has like a fear of these historical occurrences. It's a fear of privacy, fear exploitation, and then just potential stigmatization often is present. And it's just sometimes just some unnecessary risk that they have seen in the past. And so that is one reason why there is reluctancy in participating in research. So another barrier would be the social one. So when it comes to social ones, that continue to be, of course, the mistrust is present, and they have passed it down to generations, and many generations now know about something that happened back in the 30s, for sure. But there's also language barriers, right? There are people that may not be proficient in the English language. There may be consent forms that are not in their preferred language. Maybe language lines are not used, or even that just their literacy in general can impact, the way that they feel and wanting and willingness to participate in a research study. And then also when it comes to lack of community support, if their community is not supporting participating in a research, it's hard to get the buy-in from that individual, right? If no member in the community is saying yes, sign up for this, then there will be a reluctancy and there will be apprehension. So this is a continuation of barriers and what is holding people back from wanting to participate. So the first one is systematic barriers. So there is a thing called low health literacy. This is individuals that maybe don't know a lot of medical terms and things of that sort. So if it comes to clinical research, they may be really apprehensive because of just not being aware and feel like they're never going to get a clear um, understanding of what the research is about, right? And then there is limited access to technology. So there may be some research where you have to email or it's on virtual Zoom, or and if you don't have access to a laptop or a computer or a tablet, then it can be challenging to overcome. Or if you have a um, your technology literacy is not high and you don't know how to work those things, it is going to present some inability to even participate or reluctancy, right, to participate. And then there's financial constraints. So there's people that they work every day, but maybe they don't have PTO. So if a study is during a time where they would normally be working, they don't have an option to be able to take off because they can't miss a day of work and they can't have a day taken away from their pay. And because the research itself may not be, it may not have incentives that can maybe fill that gap, then there would be an apprehension on willingness, to participate in the research. And then sometimes because of the limited technology, they may not even have access to the information, so they might not even know that research is going on to even be able to say yes or no in participating as well. And then there's some consent challenges. So there may be some consents that are really unclear, and there are people that maybe don't understand, once again, due to literacy issues, or they're also, when it comes to consents, maybe they perceive things as like a really big risk, and so they're thinking, no, I don't want to participate because they don't have that trust yet, right? there may be some ethical issues going on also, that because once again because of some historical factors and just really maybe lack of understanding the benefits. So they may be saying one thing, but the benefits don't really seem to be outweigh maybe all the other barriers that they have going on. And so that may be a reason for an individual to not want and be willing to participate in that research. So now that we've gotten through the problem, I believe that there is a solution for this. So bridging the gap. So the first strategy that I would say would be essential is a community based model. So this is a partnership with a community center or a church or anything that, people from diverse backgrounds associate with. And this is trying to find an organization that they can really collaborate with, make sure things are culturally appropriate, and really gain buy in and trust from that community to hopefully be able to, in the future, be able to recruit appropriately in the community. And with that, I think when it comes to recruiting efforts, that it does need to be tailored. It needs to be customizable. It needs to be culturally relevant, and it needs to make sure that any information that is shared is in that plain language. Language services are utilized because we always want to make sure things are culturally competent. So if that's having interpreters, if that's having a language line, whatever that looks like, and understanding that there's different generations as well, and some may really like the electronic, piece of it. If you're sending out emails, and some people may be more of a pen and paper, and that is okay. Also, it is important to um, build rapport. So that's creating that trust and transparency, making sure things are explained well, making sure that they understand the goal of the study, processes, benefits, risks, incentives, and that everything is clearly spelled out. We don't want any type of deceiving going on or just misinterpretation on things as well. And then with that, I think it comes incentives and support. So making sure that there's times that is available to everyone, making sure that it's flexible, maybe transportation assistance if it's an in-person situation, and appropriate compensation. Something that is going to maybe be a motivator, and then also if someone's having to miss work, that they are compensated and that they're not going to feel less for participating in a research study. So we have now talked about the problem, the barriers, and even some solutions, but we still want to be able to collect some data for ourselves, right? And so the method that we would like to use would be the mixed method approach. So that is utilizing surveys, so that's that quantitative piece, and then also using interviews in the focus group. So that's the qualitative, right? And of course, we'll have some frameworks in place to make sure that our studies are of quality, and you can see them. There's the critical appraisal skills checklist, the effective public health practice project, um, using those as a framework to make sure that participants are treated ethically is essential. And then, of course, going back to that community based model. So, hopefully, being able to utilize experts in the community and then professionals, they may be able to do interviews or focus groups, and that is to try to incorporate that model. And then any legal or like regulatory things to consider would be, making sure we're HIPAA compliant and using the common rule of privacy to just ensure that every, all the data is continues to be protective. And then with studies in general, you use IRB frameworks and protocols. So that is ensuring that, all participants are consented, they understand their benefits and their risk and confidentiality and all the different things that make sure that they are protected. They have contact information if they have questions, all of that is what we would try to utilize in the methods piece. So this is the conclusion. So we've talked about the problem and being able to identify that. And then now we have understood what the barriers that participants that are underrepresented face. We understand why inclusion is essential and it is important in research. People need to be represented. The solution is to engage in the community centers, churches, etc. Also, making sure recruitment efforts are customized. They're tailored to that individual, they're tailored to that culture. And then, of course, being transparent with our practices, making sure informed consents are clear, and continuing to build rapport as well is important. And then, lastly, just some of the results that we're hoping to gain is, more inclusiveness in research, having things equitable in research, and then just continuing to develop and improve interventions to this underrepresented group. So this is my reference slide. These references are specifically for some of the data that was shared at the beginning of my proposal. And of course, I have additional references in my proposal document itself. Thank you for listening to my proposal on breaking barriers, the importance of increasing diversity in research participation. You can go ahead and leave a comment, ask a question. I'll respond for sure. But again, thank you for your time.